into a Harley Davidson motorbike. So when I count from 3 to 1 again, you are riding that Harley Davidson motorbike as fast as you possibly can against the rest of the racers. 3, 2, 1, here we go! And there they are off on that bike. Go on, faster, faster, faster! Faster, turning left, turning right, turning left, going up a hill, going down a hill. Good, freeze. All right, now what I want you to know now, ladies and gents, hypnotic volunteers, is I am giving each of you a set of keys for a brand new Ferrari. It's a brand new, bright red Ferrari. I'm just giving you those keys now. There you go. There's your keys, Gary. Very good. All right, so I'm giving you the keys for a brand new Ferrari. And when I count from 3 to 1, you're going to be driving that Ferrari, and you're going to drive it as fast as you can, but you need to avoid the police. Because if the police stop you, they are going to ask you for a reason to not give you a ticket. And you need to come up with the best reason for not having a ticket that you possibly can. So, you need to drive that Ferrari as fast as you can, but avoid the police, because if the police catch you, you've got to come up with a really good reason.
Hello, welcome to the showcase. My name is Shaun Martin, but you already know that. I've got lots of experience in the field of entertainment. I'm here to share with you some of the greatest talents and experience in Clubland. Great stories from great entertainers. Please subscribe to my channel. Do watch these videos. It helps me to produce more great content like this. My next guest is a comedy hypnotist from Hull. Welcome, Paul Bishop.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great, Paul. Thank you for coming on the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. I'm always looking for good people like yourself, Paul, and it's going to be good to know a bit more about you. And because even though we're both Hull lads, we don't get to meet because we're out at each other's terms where we meet.
Always working. Always working.
And in the pennies. So, Paul, tell us a bit about how you got started into being a comedy hypnotist.
All right, well, I've actually worked in the entertainment industry for a while, 27 years. I spent 26 of those being a DJ. And then New Year's Eve last year, I retired from DJing. I just reached the point where I'd had enough at 40-odd years old, and you've got 18-year-olds being annoying. I thought, right, rather than dealing with the public from behind a DJ booth, I'd rather deal with the public so I could control them. So I qualified as a hypnotherapist and hypnotist 10 years ago this year. And I've always sort of kept my hypnosis and my entertainment side separate. But in 2022, I closed my clinic because of COVID and the cost of living crisis then meant that I wasn't getting clients. And when I thought, well, I've had enough of DJing, I'm done now, I don't want to do it anymore, I still thought, well, I still want to go out and entertain people. I wrote the Hypnosis show, and I've been doing that for the last year, working across the country, basically.
So you must enjoy it then.
I mean, I love hypnosis. I mean, obviously, I learned to do it. I had my own clinic. I was working with clients for all sorts of things: depression and anxiety, nail biting, bedwetting, eczema, the lot, right? But I always, like I said, because I DJ'd as well, I wanted to keep the two sort of separate. But then, because I've not been able to, because of the cost of living crisis, which is here in the UK, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a flash in the pan. I'll get a proper job for a year, and then prices will come back down, and everyone will be happy, and everyone will have loads of money, and it just isn't the case. So I had to close the clinic. So then when I looked at sort of things to do after DJing, I thought, well, I know how to do this. I know how to, because as well as DJing, I was a compere, I was a host. I worked at the Good Fellowship for 13 years. So I worked with a lot of people that you have that you've had on your showcase so far. Moved in a lot of circles as people like Rick Owen, Craig
Yes.
Harper. I know John Green, who you've recently had
Yeah.
on. So I know quite a lot of the people that you've already had on through working in the entertainment industry, and also John is a qualified hypnotist as well.
Aye. That's good news.
So I got to know quite a lot of the people within Clubland from doing DJing, and then I thought, well, I know that I can host and compare, so let's use the hypnosis and those skills that I learned from comparing to go out and do my show.
So where does the comedy fit in? Is the comedy what you kind of like make people do? Is that how you get people to laugh?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that I do. I mean, the sort of the first. I mean, the show's about 2 hours long. So the first sort of 20 minutes of that is sort of an introduction, talking to people about what hypnosis is and what hypnosis isn't, doing some suggestibility games and things like that to find, because you're not allowed to like get people up, you've got to ask people to volunteer. So I do some suggestibility games to find the good people. And so I crack a few gags while that's happening, and then obviously the comedy generally comes from the things that I get people to do when they're in hypnosis.
Because Paul, you and I know that trying to make people laugh nowadays is a challenging thing because there's so many things you can't do. You know, if it's not, you know, politically incorrect or right, you know. So how do you overcome all those things?
Well, at the beginning, when I'm talking about hypnosis and cracking a few gags, I do one of the first things I ever say is it's just a joke. Nothing that I say here is meant to offend. It's just something to make people laugh. And then actually, although I've hypnotized the volunteers, some of the things that they do, I can't necessarily stop them from saying stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are some times where I think, oh, hang on a minute, or where they'll act out something that I've asked them to do, and they'll go climb on a chair or climb on a table, and I just have to get them to get down. So I will say things to the volunteers to try and get them to sort of stay away from offending people or hurting people or potentially hurting themselves. But sometimes you just can't help it.
I was going to ask you that. That was my next question. You know, have you ever experienced anything challenging or somebody's hurt themselves or done something stupid?
No, not that anybody's hurt themselves, because I always try and always do my best to try and stop that from happening. I did do one show, I won't tell you where it is, but I did do one show where somebody, I always do a sort of thing of, if you're going to volunteer, these are some people that I don't want to get up, like a due diligence thing. So if you're taking life-saving medication, or if you've got movement issues, for example, I'm a hypnotist, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what to do if something happens from that point of view. So I always do that. And one thing that I did forget to say during this particular show is that if you're taking anything or having any medication for bipolar or any sort of personality disorder, I forgot to say that, and somebody got up who was diagnosed as bipolar, and I hypnotized them. Didn't know, hypnotized them, and then when I brought them round within the so I do a thing where when I count backwards from 3 to 1, their eyes open and they can move about, but they're in what's called a somnambulistic state. So what that basically means is that they are still hypnotized, but they can move about and think that they are awake. So I got to that and brought him out into the somnambulistic state, and he couldn't walk, he'd gone all dizzy. I had to bring him back to the chair, bring him round properly, end the show a little bit earlier, and there was another room in the pub that wasn't open. So I took him through there, and he was stuttering, which he didn't stutter, and he vomited because he felt dizzy and stuff. And it was only through questioning at that point that I realised that he'd got up and I hadn't. I mean, so I always make sure I say it now, but it was a slightly scary situation. It's what we in the hypnotism world called an ab reaction, where the fact that you go into a relaxed state allows emotion to come through, and it was a slightly scary. I'm back at the venue next month, but it was a slightly scary situation. But I dealt with it because, again, the training that I had when I trained as a hypnotist allowed me to be able to operate that and do that and sort it out. It just meant that I had to close the show a little bit earlier to deal with him.
Paul, I once went to a hypnotist thing and I kind of like half believed it and half didn't. And some people in the audience say it's a load of baloney. Forgive me for saying that, but
No,
what do you say to those people?
Well, I mean, a lot of the times the places where I perform are in pubs, bars, venues, that sort of stuff. So people generally aren't in the pub on their own. They're normally out with a group of friends. So a lot of times you can get people up and do stuff, and somebody over this side of the room might say, "Oh, I don't think that was real," and somebody at this side of the room that was with the person that got up are like, "Well, he's never behaved like that before, or she's never behaved like that before. He wouldn't do that sort of thing normally." So actually, a lot of the time, it's down to how the public, the audience, actually react to what goes on, and sometimes it's the discussion that makes the show. Because you'll get people that watch the show and are just like, "Wow, how do you do that?" And then other people that will just go. I did a show in a venue in near Nottingham, and there was just a lass that was sat sort of to my right hand side, and everything that I did, she just went, "No, no," and it's just like, well, yeah, I'm doing it. You can see it. It's what's happening. It just happens. It's one of those things, and it is. When I was DJing, I used to see a lot of stage hypnotists. Now you don't see so many about, which is quite good for me because it's meant that I've been able to sort of bring it back within the area. And I spent a lot of my early year. Because it was only last year that I started doing the show. So a lot of the early time was working in and around Hull, but towards the back end of last year, and certainly bookings this year, my first Hull show this year is on March the 14th.
So how do you get your work? Is it management or you just kind of like got a good reputation?
It was a couple of ways, really. I got some work last year from Liz at McLeod's. And then I have an agent that I work with in and around sort of the Sheffield, Rotherham, Barnsley area. He's got me about 5 or 6 gigs this year. My next gig on Friday of this week, which happens to be Valentine's Day, I got through him. And I also use the Circle on Facebook. I'm in the Circle all the time, and I'll either post my availability as me, or I'll look through at least once a day and look for things where people are looking for acts. And I just always market it as something. I know that you're a singer, Shaun, and I know that there are a lot of singers in Clubland,
Yes.
but a venue that I did last year in summer, which was a caravan park, they had specifically asked the agent to find something different from a singer, because singers come on and generally singers tend to sing a lot of the same songs. You'll know. You've
Sweet
done it for long enough.
Caroline.
Sweet Caroline and Penny Arcade and all of those, all the stuff that you hear all the time. And I, when I worked at Good Fellowship, I used to do some stuff on a Tuesday afternoon with them, with the over 50. And all the singers would do the same songs. So there was Amarillo, there was the Mavericks, Dance the Night Away. You knew that those songs were going to come up. You knew that Penny Arcade was going to come up. You knew that Sweet Caroline was going to come up. It got a bit samey.
Well, that's why I came back, Paul, because I did an hour of the Eagles, an hour of Smokey. Very different. Mm-hmm. And people were saying, "Can you do Penny Arcade? Can you, And people say, "Well, you've got to do what the audience want." No, you then become the same as everybody else,
Absolutely.
So I understand what you're doing because you come over very professional. You're very strong, and you've got to be strong as a hypnotist. And, you've got to be able to pull the show together, because I suppose I can imagine it can easily fall apart if you haven't got that strength.
Absolutely. I mean, I did a show a little while ago, and I had 3 attempts at getting volunteers up. And for whatever reason, none of them would go.
Right.
But in between, attempts at getting people under and things like that, I would do suggestibility games, or I would get people up to to talk to them about things, and went more into a host compare role rather than a hypnotist, but then playing some silly suggestibility games and things with the people to just sort of link it back to being back about hypnosis. It happens. It's a natural thing. Again, with a singer, you turn up, you plug your speakers in, you put your backing track on, or you play your guitar, and the music's going to come out, and you're going to be able to do your act. With what I do, it relies on people that aren't entertainers. It relies on people that are sat in the pub to come up and perform and become the star of the show. So it's having the ability to move with that and to be
Yeah.
able to sort of adapt and work your way
Okay.
around that.
That's nice, Paul. I hope when the video's edited and you become on my showcase theme there, that people will book you from that, because people are getting booked, which is nice. I'm really chuffed about it. What's been the most magical point for you in doing this?
In being a hypnotist, it's the fact of people, two things really, people reaching out from places where I aren't. Like, because when I used to DJ, the majority of my life I DJ'd in and around Hull.
Yes.
I did some shows down in. I used to play in a nightclub down in Spalding in Lincolnshire. Did some shows, some DJ sets across in Manchester, and I went across to Corfu. But in general, most of my DJ sets were in Hull. Whereas this isn't. I actually prefer shows where I'm not in Hull. Not because I don't love my city. I do love my city. I absolutely adore living in Hull. But a lot of people in Hull know me for being a DJ. They don't know me for being a stage hypnotist. Whereas when I go somewhere out of Hull and I say I'm a hypnotist, straight away the volunteers, the audience are like, yeah, that's what he is, because I turn up in a waistcoat with a watch on and everything like that. And it creates the fact of, yes, he is a hypnotist, that's what he does. So I think, first of all, being recognised out of my town and being able to do shows out of my town is pretty magical for me. And secondly, it happened this week. I got a message from somebody, and to be fair, I did a show at their venue last year, and I came away from that venue and thought, I mean, I'd got people up, people had laughed. But I came away from that thinking, oh, that wasn't the best show I've ever done. And I got a message back in the last week, Friday, I think it was, from the landlady of the venue, and she was like, people still haven't stopped talking about your show. Can I book you in for this year? Can I get you back for this year so that we can do it again? So that's fairly magical. It gives you that, the fact of, well, all right, I didn't feel that show went particularly well, but they enjoyed it and they had a laugh and they want me to come back and do it again. And this time, obviously, because I know the layout of the venue and some of the faces, because it's a fairly local, regular pub, that you can work around it a bit better because you're comfortable with it and you know where it is. So you get better as you go along.
I would have thought, Paul, that your act would have been perfect for holiday parks. Is it?
Yeah, it is. I did a holiday park last year through Liz at McLeod's. I've got 2 this year, so I've got one in Morecambe and one in Wales. I'm doing a show in Wales in August, at a caravan park in Wales. Now, the only thing with caravan parks is a little bit like when you spoke to Rick Owens. Some of my show, there's so many routines that I can do, and my show can be very family friendly, which is very, very good. It can also be a little bit cheeky. Never blue, but cheeky.
Like cheeky.
So it can be a little bit cheeky and a little bit
Touching the bone.
touching the bone a little bit. And it's sometimes you sort of go into autopilot because you know that these things make people laugh, but sometimes some of the routines are not something that are going to work with a holiday park where there's families and stuff.
I
So
understand.
when you're doing the holiday parks, and I don't mind doing the holiday parks, quite happy to do it, not a problem at all. But I've just got to concentrate a little bit more to stop myself from going into pub show rather than holiday park.
I understand, yeah. Steve Martin Entertainment's up down in Cleethorpes there. They've got loads of work. I did a lot for them when I came back. Right, it's been good trying to understand what you do, Paul, because comedy and hypnosis are two different things, but combining it together, I suppose, is a real good laugh. And I've had a look at your video, yeah, and it's very entertaining. So what I'd like to ask the audience or the viewers, if you want to leave any comments on this video when it's on YouTube, or you've got any questions you want to ask Paul, then ask. I'm happy to pass those over if Paul doesn't look at the YouTube every day like I'm obsessed with doing. So it's very important that you do it. And most of all, watch these videos because you'll see Paul in action at the beginning, or you'll have seen Paul in action. Let's talk about the past tense, and hopefully it's something that you want to go with. So Paul, the last words from you. Is it an easy job, and would you suggest a new and upcoming comedy hypnotist to get into the business, or do you think it's already saturated?
No, I don't necessarily think it's saturated. There are some guys who have been around for a while doing shows. I mean, I've come into it. I've only done a year. There are a lot of shows that are coming out now that sort of combine hypnotism and mind reading. So go a little bit down the Derren Brown route, which is good because it gives something a bit different. I don't do that. I just do the comedy hypnosis, but there is that little bit of difference. So hypnosis and a mind reading. So it becomes a little bit more like what people are familiar with from watching shows like with people like Derren Brown and things like that. So that's quite nice. My advice for anybody that wants to do this is you can't just go straight into it. You need to have, from my point of view, I feel that you need to have some sort of stage persona, history or background, whether it's comparing at a club or in a bar, whether it's DJing, and being able to sort of control to a certain extent an audience and get them to focus on the things that they need to be focusing on. If you haven't got that, then the first person that shouts out something, your show's derailed straight away. So you've got to be confident. You've got to have something about you to be able to sort of bring people to focus on the show and be able to command the stage. Because ultimately, despite the fact that everyone's laughing at the people that are sat on chairs in front of you and doing silly stuff, the show, you're the puppeteer. You're making the show happen. So you've got to be confident. You've got to have the knowledge to be able to hypnotize people properly, ethically, and safely. And you have to be able to control that audience.
Words of wisdom, Paul. Coming towards the end of the show, can I ask you, I want my website to be successful. How can you hypnotize me to make that happen?
I'm good. I'm not a miracle worker.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Ladies and gents, you're watching the showcase, and special guest today, episode I think 38, is Paul Bishop from Hull, and I'm sure he's March. Where's your next gig, Paul, in Hull?
Skipper's Tavern, Branzone.
Know it well. Rick Owen's stomping grounds.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes,
it is
around the corner from me.
So, Paul, look after yourself. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Hope things continue to be successful for you, and get your friends to watch these videos. That's what it's all about, and you never know, the bookings will be coming in. Thanks, Paul.
Of course.